Hi everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to have, Professor Akshay Raghuvanshi here with us today. He's Assistant Dean and Associate Professor at the Jindal School of Design and Architecture. He's had an illustrious career. He's someone who has been part of Indian environments for quite some time, and at the same time, for a very long time, he spent a good 17, 18 odd years, in the US. He's done his Master of Fine Arts at the Academy of Art University in San Francisco. He's someone who specializes in immersive 3D environment design. It includes many aspects such as spatial interaction, environmental modeling, and lighting and texturing. So he's someone who has come in here today, to be able to talk to us about what's happening in the gaming industry, what's happening, with respect to gaming careers, what are universities doing, what is it that we can do, because this is obviously an area that a lot of people, including the Indian government, if you look at, the recent budget that came out, there's a lot of focus on being able to create what is being called as the orange economy. And that's something that is very, very relevant for people like us. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Vishal.
Tell us about your journey. Tell us about, your stint in the US and then coming back to India.
Yeah. So I belong to a family of engineers. My dad is an ex-IIT engineer from IIT Kharagpur. He passed out. His core was into mechanical engineering. Starting that time, everyone knew that I'm the lone son in the family. Would like to start off with, mechanical engineering as a counterpart with my dad. That was not the case. I was really fond of, games back at that time when I was in my, third grade or fourth grade. There was a time when I started off playing with Mario Brothers, and I was very intrigued. I was actually very interested to, understand the mechanics behind that, how an application like this is developed. It took a little bit of a time for me. I did my 10th and 12th in physics, chemistry, and maths. I'm a PCM student. I was. It took me a little while to, let my mom and dad know that that's the place, where I really want to go. Initially was very hard because back in late 1990s, it was very hard for any Indian parent to understand that what game development is all about. It was pretty hard thing for me to just kind of make them understand, but eventually I was able to succeed. My mom and dad said, okay, let's go ahead and do it, and let's see what you can do. Started off with my bachelor's in fine arts. Specialization I did was animation. And then post that, I shifted back to States because still in early 2000s, game development was nowhere to be present in India. Even if you really wanted to, learn something about animation, the core faculties for the specific field, I would say, was not even present. Right. It was pretty hard, for me to even just kind of comprehend that how to go about things. But then, I did my, bachelor's, as I said, in animation, and then I did my master's in fine arts and game development back in San Francisco. As soon as I was done with my bachelor's, I immediately moved back to States. So did spend about 3.5 years into education. I did fairly well, I suppose. As I said, I was very fond of game development, so I took it pretty seriously. I was also first Indian valedictorian who got the honors for that in Academy of Art, and so it's a pretty world-renowned university. It comes top 5, I guess, when it comes to art and development. So that was a very good experience. Post that, I started working off with indie game development studios, like a shorter team of about 15-20 people working for a single independent title. Post that, I started to work into AAA games also, have a quite good amount of experience for that, about 7.5 to 8 years actively into industry, building environments. Environment art is something which is my forte, had been since day one, and it still is. Post that, I've also worked with lot of projects with the US government as well. And also I have, been actively working into augmented reality and virtual reality. So that's the last space which I still belong to. I still work with them because that's something which keeps me a part of the industry, and I really know what's going on in the industry in terms of tool technologies and pipeline. And that's something which is, for us as educators, is really important as well.
I think it's an amazing journey. you went to the US, you came back, and I think you went to the US again. Is that?
No, it was just once and for all. Yeah.
Okay.
Spent quite a bit of time there, and then I just kind of came back India.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So, how, big is the gaming industry globally today, and where does India fit into this scheme of things?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. If we talk about globally, game development or gaming as a sector, it's just kind of stand multi-billion right at the moment. It should be about 65 to $80 billion industry we are looking at currently. Mm-hmm. In another, let's say about 7 to 8 years down the road, possibly it would hit $1 trillion as well. That's what the overall projections we are looking at. Right. India, starting in from early 2000s, I would say, was just primarily a consumer, and post that the development started to become in India also. Back in early 2000, it was, I would say, just a couple of $100,000 industry. Then starting off late 2000s, like 2009, 2010, that was a time when things started to build up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you think, India is it a consumption hub, or are we actually producing games?
Yeah.
For the world market or for the Indian market?
Yeah, it used to be. We used to be primarily as consumers. Okay. But since last 12, 13, 14 years down the road, I have seen that people have started to invest in their own IPs too. Even before that, starting late 2009, we see that there are two primarily studios who are available in India. One is Akshay, which is in Gurgaon itself. Right. And then there is another one that used to be called Dhruva Studios, that used to be in Bangalore. Okay. These two were the primary studios who used to take all the AAA outsourcing projects, from different gaming groups, game companies, and they typically used to work for them. So whatever outsourcing, let's say that somebody working at Ubisoft is, they have to outsource something to, some of their counterparts. So these two were studios in India who used to do work for them. Okay. But now that has boomed amazingly. Right. As I said, initially was just $100,000 industry. Right now it's a $1 billion industry in India. Right. Yeah.
And I would imagine you're seeing this grow further in the next few years.
Absolutely. No doubts about it. Right now, if we take a look at it, as you just spoke, that, the new budget has just come into the picture. Indian government for the very first time has focused heavily on the gaming sector of things. And that's something which, even if it was not a point of picture right at the moment, if we see, but still there is an exponential amount of growth, which is, happening in India, across India. And number of studios are coming to India. You start to, if we start to talk about from Rockstar Games is in India now. Okay. Ubisoft is in India. They have their headquarters in Mumbai. Then you have other organizations as well, which have shorter studios back in India with a limited amount of team, but they are actively opening up.
Lovely. Yeah. Very nice. So I think this is very, very relevant. And I think, why do you think this is an exciting time for, students considering careers for themselves? And obviously, we now know that there's far more options in the Indian context. So why should someone consider, gaming, the interactive media, courses, programs, and in the process, careers for themselves?
Yeah. So how easy? I mean, how can I explain this in a super easy format? Is that game development is not something which is very shortly knit to gaming side of it. That's not the case, fortunately. If we talk about cross domains, as I said, 15 years ago, India started to push heavily on the digital side of things. So now, so let's say that the game development pipeline has pre-production, production, and post. There are certain set of softwares and core skill set which are required in order to, achieve what you really want to do. Fortunately, that's the same pipeline across a lot of different domains. Right. For example, if we take about architecture. So architecture visualizations, these days, clients really want to see everything into virtual reality, that how their entire, house, whatever is being constructed or facility is constructed, being built, entire pipeline is game development one. Mm-hmm. If we start to talk about medicine, doctors these days would like to do complex surgeries, not on dummies. They would like to simulate it. Okay. So once the simulation comes into picture, it's exactly the game pipeline. What you have to follow in terms of understanding, art form shapes. starting on from, what kind of tool set do you need? What other software platforms do you need? It's 99% the same. And then if we talk about animation, of course, animation and game development is just more or less 80% matched to, amongst each other. And then the rest 20% is about optimization side for game development and the non-optimization and animation side for animation.
Right.
And then Hollywood VFX, Bollywood VFX industries is something which, of course, have recently started to implement game development as a pipeline. I just saw Yash Raj Films and a couple of other studios as well. They are hiring actively for Unreal Engine and game development artists.
So can you give me, so you watch a lot of movies nowadays which have a very, very high-end animation, special effects.
Yeah.
And is a lot of this done here in India?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's actively done now, and it was being done before also.
Okay.
So if we talk about last 12 years or 13 years down the road, most of the big titles we see, starting from Lion King to any other VFX part, Hollywood part, Bollywood part side of the things, it's mostly been done in India as an outsource.
Nice. So, which means that this whole concept of gaming is much more than game design. There's much more to it.
Absolutely. As I said, it has its roots everywhere, and that is something which is constantly growing. It's not halting at one point. Starting on from application development to, if we even consider UI UX. That's also an active part of game development. Artificial intelligence has been part of game development since a very long time, since the early beginning of game development side. Right. So this is something which, doesn't only cover the gaming side of it, but the doors and the channels to almost every digital part of, sector across India, covering all the digital aspects of it. You can just go ahead and, achieve whatever you really want to in any of the sectors you're looking at.
Absolutely. So I would assume that this kind of immersive tech, gaming design would be beyond what you talked about, Mario Brothers or whatever else.
Absolutely.
I would imagine aviation.
Absolutely.
Has gaming design.
Absolutely.
You talked about the film industry.
Yeah.
Many other, let's say, interactive mechanisms would also be there.
Absolutely. And you absolutely said it right. Couple of my students are actually working with couple of organizations who are, a part of Indian military and Navy as well. What they are doing is, so my students are working on simulations for, pilots for fighter jets, basically. Okay. So how, rather than, getting a fighter pilot into a simulator, rather than doing that, they would just kind of make him wear a headset, which just kind of gives him an overall look and feel of he or she is actually sitting in the cockpit of a plane. And then how to fly it, and then, setting up all the controls and everything. It's just the same way, like, we are playing a game, we click a button and then the door opens up. It's a similar interaction, but right here, you just kind of move a joystick virtually, and, that's how the plane would navigate, and then, understanding the thrust, how much you have to do, and then what the rest of the buttons and this and that works.
So these flight simulators must be very high-end versions of, game design.
Absolutely.
Right.
So the core fundamental is exactly the same. Implementations are exactly the same. Now, if you really want to scale it up to whatever heights you really want to, you can certainly do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do the students who are considering careers at this moment of time, they're looking at alternatives, right? And one of the big alternatives could be, human-centered design. It could be creative computing. It could be, immersive technology. It could be gaming development. Are these essentially careers of the future? And
yes.
Present, of course.
Yeah, they are. There's no question about it. Like, in the older times, back in late 1800s and 1900s in India, medicine was the top priority. Engineering was the top priority because that was something which was very heavily industry demanding. Unfortunately, that's not the case right at the moment. I'm not saying that it's not an active part of the industry. It is, but then the overall shift has been moved into the digital domain now. So this is something which has already started to happen 5 years ago. still happening right now. And I can certainly say, because I'm still connected to the industry and in Indian as well as my US counterparts as well, that's something which is going to go growing another 35, 40 years down the road. No questions asked.
So you keep hearing about the fact that, it's there in the news. People may not require to do coding anymore, right? But I guess look at more higher end, usefulness of the skill sets.
Yeah.
Designing, for example, or solving problems. Is that the same within, let's say, the gaming industry?
Yeah, it is. So these days, what I usually say is that let's just kind of rewind back a little bit. Back in early 2000s. So if I talk about game development as a sector, so it used to be very segregated in terms of how the overall approach and the production, the pipeline would work. So let's say that there is a pre-production part. So then there's a dedicated team for that, dedicated team for production as well. Within the production, there was about 5-6 different teams working all together. And then post-production, there's a different skill set of people. And then there is another team of software engineers who are just only working on the code part, of things. And they used to, we used to call them rulers because they used to rule the entire space and domain. Whatever they have to, say that this model is creating this bug and just kind of rewire it so that, we can fix it kind of thing. It's still there, but it's actively changing.
Right.
One live example I can tell you is one colleague of mine. He's a senior software engineer working with Capital One back in Dallas in Texas.
Okay.
So this is what is the current right now. What's happening in States? There is no more hiring happening for junior software engineers, even on the mid-level engineers, software engineers specifically, no more required. Reason why? Because mostly artificial intelligence can do it.
Right. So tell me something. So you are a master of fine art, right? And obviously you built your career and your prominence, and people know you as someone who's into immersive technology, gaming. So tell me a little bit about how your master of fine arts journey has enabled you to become, firstly, into gaming technologist. Yeah. And then, of course, into academia. So how does a fine art qualification help you in this regard?
So, understanding the fundamentals is really required. Okay. It really doesn't matter that, how good you are with your scripts and codes and overall approach. Okay. But ideally, both of them are just kind of cohesive. They just kind of work with each other in one environment. If your fundamentals are really absolutely spot on and solid, then your overall result output would be really good. And if the fundamentals are not sorted, like let's say, for example, what's the lighting at, where the shadow would come, is it a 2.3 point, how you have to approach it, what's the overall look and feel, mood, story. So it all depends upon, your fundamentals. If fundamentals are strong, then the overall everything would be strong. Right. But if that's not there, then nothing would work.
Right. Interesting. So what you're saying is that, the fact that you've done your fine arts qualification, that has created your domain mastery.
Absolutely.
In a way. And then whatever tools come along, whatever software comes along, and that will obviously change over a period of time as well. You've got it covered.
Yeah. But there is one very important thing to, just kind of note. Mm-hmm. So fundamentals is something which is still, one of the very solid aspects of, starting in from the foundation. Mm-hmm. If your fundamentals are good, then that's great. But if your skill set is not there, you would still not be able to survive and sustain. Mm-hmm. India as an industry, or maybe globally as well, we call it TATs, like turnaround times. If turnaround times, if let's say 5 years ago used to be for one asset about 6 hours, now it has shortened to 2. Right. It's just because the tools and the skills and the tools required to go ahead and push that, I would say not even push for the finish, while at the same time just kind of cutting down on time. If you're not good with that, and if you're not learning, then it's kind of no use. Yeah. And one very interesting thing which I have learned very recently is that I was looking at one of the interviews of one investor who has invested in an American organization. I'm just I don't remember the name right at the moment. They are the ones who are just kind of bringing the woolly mammoth back. Okay. So, and they are they are world's first who are, getting into rewiring the DNA structures and everything.
Right.
So what he said is that right now, I think that tools is something which should be heavily focused on, because and I completely agree with that point, because if we don't learn the tools, then there's no control Z, so we cannot undo anything.
I agree.
Yeah.
Perfect. But thank you.
Yeah.
So if we obviously at the University of Southampton, Delhi, we have a BSc Creative Computing course that we've launched for the academic year 26-27. So if you were designing such a program, a graduate program in creative computing, what would you definitely put there? What's non-negotiable?
Non-negotiable is the art side of it.
Okay.
Art is something which just kind of creates that entire ecosystem. Again, the core focus should not be only on the computing side, or the scripts and the code side, because these days, what we call the scripts and codes is, rather than doing it by yourself, there's something called vibe coding. So if you vibe code using, Gemini or ChatGPT, both of them are really good. So that's something which is still achievable very quickly. But again, if the art perspectives and the fundamentals are not there, then you would not be able to sustain just only with the code side of it, because that is something still somebody who doesn't even have any experience or expertise for software languages can still achieve it somehow. But if the art perspective is something, if you don't have any prior experience, AI would not even be able to help you right at the moment, because it creates a lot of mistakes, and it can only be ironed out with trained eyes. You can understand that, okay, this is what is the issue we're happening right at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So for a student who loves, let's say, technology and storytelling, right, art and designing, who has this affinity for, let's say, appreciating creativity, but at the same time being able to model it over a period of time.
Sure.
So is this something that does creative computing become a good avenue for?
Absolutely, career? Without a doubt. Because creative computing, right here, I think just kind of covers up almost all the domains. Right. Starting in from, as we spoke earlier as well, from medicine to Indian Army to military to navies to game development to animation to VFXs. So it just mostly covers up everything, in terms of entire ecosystem for digital art and asset build, I call it. And plus, that also opens up, students to, start their own business as well later on. Because, that's also something which I think is really important. We really need, the young generation to go ahead and start, setting up their own domains, start setting up their own IPs as well. That's something I think which is, it's really necessary. And I think, enrolling into this course is something which is going to help them a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are, Indian universities, Indian educational ecosystem, what are they actually doing about, promoting and ensuring that students who are interested in this have a way to be able to, create economic careers out of this?
Yeah, that's a tough question to deal with. But what I can tell you is that it's very unfortunate to see that quite a lot of universities are still not able to cope up to what the industry really demands. Our industry versus a typical IT industry is really different. If you are from an IT background or maybe an engineering backdrop or any other place, there would be a 6 months of training period, something given to you, so that you can get accustomed to their systems and everything. But that's not the case here with us. The first day you join, there is a turnaround time at day one. Can you go ahead and do this? Unfortunately, that's something which is still not very strictly adhered. People are still trying to rely on the older side of just only covering up the art perspective, but they are just not understanding that that's something industry doesn't demand. Their requirements are really different. And if you're not able to train students into that direction, then it's very hard to just kind of give them proper justice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So The other question, of course, I was thinking of, and obviously now I was reflecting back on what you mentioned very initially in our conversation about how gaming has kind of become so sophisticated, how it's being utilized in across the industries, and I think I was reflecting back on my 1980s, early 90s. You had these Mario Brothers, and you had two, let's say, screens that used to open up.
Sure.
You had that kind of connector.
Sure.
So obviously we've gone much beyond that. And obviously, in the morning I was talking to someone, and he was saying that he, along with his daughter, created a game out of Claude.
Sure.
With the help of
Claude. Yeah.
In half an hour.
Yeah, half an hour. Yes, that's true.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So in this, where does the human element come in?
Yeah. So right now we are looking at very early stages of AI just kind of been completely developing a game. I don't think so that's still happening in another 15-20 years down the road, because industry is very very specific to their own art style.
Right.
So let's say that if I'm working at Ubisoft, then people at UB have a very different art style, in terms of working in Far Cry, or maybe you're working with Assassin's Creed, very different. Mm-hmm. Then if you are working with Blizzard, then Blizzard have their own amazing life, like their own art style as well. Mm-hmm. And the life they live, it's very different. So in order to achieve that similar look and feel for an artificial intelligence, it's still not there yet. And that requires time. I think about 15-20 years down the road, I don't see that coming so soon. Mm-hmm. And these shorter versions, which you see, is something just to promote. Let's say Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini. I mean, you name anybody. They're just trying to set things up that, hey, our systems are so well designed that we can do this. But still, there is a technical proficiency side of it as well. That how stressful they are for the system. Yeah. What different set of hardware this similar application can run on, and that still requires a human intervention. And at the same time, of course, the art, the aesthetics, overall look and feel, and the human-centric way of understanding things as well. That is it really hurting any religion or no? Because AI doesn't understand that yet. Right. So it's still not there.
Perfect. And I guess what you're saying is that it's a human-centric problem to solve, not a tech-centric.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. And if you were talking to, let's say, a 17-year-old student right now who's in school but is now exploring opportunities and possibly has, gaming, creative computing, design thinking, design as an alternative, right? What would you tell this person about the opportunity that he could look at?
Yeah. So it's first thing what I feel is that if a student is really passionate, that's the only thing which is required. Right. And if that passion is there, then I don't think so that there's any chance or any time required to convince anybody, because kids these days, they are very smart. They already know what the market trend is, where the industry is going and growing. All they are looking at is that, what's the best platform where I can learn all of it. Right. And we, or at least me as an educator, and you and me all together as educators, our responsibility is to make sure that we deliver them right, with, of course, making sure that the ethical part and ethics of art and everything else is well covered off and taken care of, so that they can be very well designers and artists later on, rather than somebody who doesn't have any understanding of all of this, versus a very well trained, very skilled, highly respected and reputable artist later on.
Got it.
Yeah.
Good point. I think these are very refreshing and very insightful. At least for me, the conversation has been very insightful and eye-opening. I just wanted to ask you that one last question.
Sure.
What are the kind of organizations at Indian levels as well as at global levels that students can think of once they graduate and move into careers for themselves?
Yeah, a lot. So if we talk about India, let's say, start from our own country. International organizations, as I said, like Ubisoft is present in India. Rockstar North is there in India. Like actively working. So if we talk about Grand Theft Auto, we all know about GTAs. So GTA 6 is almost quite a huge part of the entire production is being done in India from last 7, 8, 9 years. A lot of my students are working there too, on the same project. And then if we talk about outsourcing, you name it, and I think we should have almost everything here. Whatever international, film, VFX, and games, the high-ranking ones we see, almost all of them have their roots in India. Okay. Somebody or the other would be working on a lot of their assets, a lot of their builds, a lot of their lighting, a lot of shading technology, shaders, blueprints, and all of it. That's something which we are looking at India at a core level. And if somebody really wants to head outside India, then of course, England, UK is one place to go. You have a lot of good studios back there. Yeah. And then if somebody is really looking at game development side of things, then, you can also head to United States, because of course, game development is something which started off from there. Yeah. So they're still, I would say, the kings of, the game development side of things. Lot to learn from them. That's one place to go. If you're mostly into, anime side of things, then Japan is one place to go. Singapore as well, we see, is just kind of coming up actively, and then Germany is also something which is actively developing a lot of things. Yeah.
Brilliant. I think this has been very good, eye-opening, like I said.
Yeah.
And also at the same time, mouth-watering, because there's so much opportunity that
Absolutely.
Our students have.
Absolutely.
Of course, that we have the BSc in Creative Computing
that
we've launched for the academic year 26-27. It's the right balance of art.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's about coding. It's about algorithmic thinking.
Yeah.
And obviously, the idea is to look at very robust careers for them. For the longer term.
Yeah.
Whether that be in gaming, whether that be becoming a digital public artist, whether it's UX, UI, the sky is obviously the limit.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Such a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, likewise.
And I really look forward to talk to you again on this platform once again. There's so much for the students to mull over and think about. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.